What is up, internet? It's your boy Ronan back at you again. Normally, this is the part of the video where I talk to the camera, but I'm not feeling that hot. I don't want to be on camera today. So, you want to see my face? Go look at another video. But yeah, this will have to do for now. So today is going to be also different in another way, in that I'm going to show you kind of how I tend to color my art, my comic book art. So I'm going to be coloring a page from the upcoming update that's going to be happening on my comic book soon. If you don't know, I have a cool comic called The Heavy. You can check it out in the description below. It's kind of like a sci-fi militaristic drama with mechs and stuff and cool, cool vehicles, whatever. But it's pretty cool, and I think you'll like it if you did that kind of thing. So anyways, that's what we're going to get into. So I'll catch up with you at the end. So this is the piece I'm going to be putting some colors on today. It's from my comic book, on the update I'm working on, and just give you a little overview of how I do it. How I do it is not necessarily the way to do it. You can color your stuff however you want, however you're comfortable with. This is just my method. So the first thing you're going to want to do is the way most standard comics are made, like if they're print comics, like if someone just draws and scans it in, kind of like what I do. This is called the flatting method. And basically, you're just assigning a color to every shape on the page, so that you could easily grab it and just change it really quickly. You don't even have to color these the actual local colors they're going to be. You can color them anything. Some of my comic books or some of my illustrations, I just throw any color on there because I'm going to grab it and change it really later anyway. These aren't going to change, but it's only because I've already established this scene. Like I have another page already colored. So I'm just borrowing the colors from those base colors that I already know it's going to be. But if I hadn't decided the tone or whatever, I'd just color them anything. A lot of professional like comic book colorists, a lot of times they have assistants who all they do is just flat stuff out. Sometimes they don't even bother with this because it's pretty time consuming compared to the actual coloring part. Doing the flats is the most time consuming part. If you're drawing straight up on like a tablet or whatever, and you're not even, you're not doing this, you're not doing, traditional, you probably don't even have to flat stuff. You could just draw on a totally different layer with each of your colors if you want to, or something like that. So like I said, there's a ton of different ways to do this stuff, but this is my way of doing it. So yeah, getting the flatting out of the way here. Some people might say, why aren't you using the paint bucket tool? A lot of times it doesn't do it 100% correctly if your drawing is kind of complex. The simpler the drawing, the easier it is to use the paint bucket tool. So sometimes you end up, doing the paint bucket tool, and then you have to go in anyway and then lasso a little part that it missed and fill in the color. So it's kind of like, well, if you're gonna have to lasso it, sometimes might as well just lasso it from the beginning and know that the whole shape is filled and there's no part that got missed. So now that that's all flatted out onto the shadows, I make my shadows, well, it depends on the temperature of the room or whatever, but a lot of times I just make them blue. This is kind of like a cell shaded kind of art style. I don't, so it's basically a lot of hard cuts. I mean, I do a little bit of soft rendering, but it's basically like a lot of hard cuts, a lot of hard shapes. So a harsh hard shadow like that, I just make it blue and then I just multiply it down. So, and then just mess with the opacity, so it'll blend in just perfectly, really. You'll see what I mean. So yeah, and I only do maybe like 2 layers of shadows or 2 levels of shadows, like a depth of just 2, because I have a flat drawing style. The whole my style is kind of abstracted in that it's very flat, the really thick lines and thick outlines. So if I do my shadows and my shading and my lighting too robust, if it's too 3-dimensional, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a flat looking drawing style. You know what I mean? So I try not to go overboard with my shadows and stuff, because it just kind of defeats the purpose. So just enough to give it a little bit of depth, but I don't want it to be really a very deep piece. So yeah. Also, I'm using the pen tool as opposed to like the lasso or whatever to make shapes that I really want to use. I mean, one might use if you were painting on a tablet or whatever, you could just use the actual stylus just to draw your shadows or your colors or anything. But I've used a mouse for so long that I'm pretty fast with this, and I've noticed it doesn't go any faster. So for the time being, I still use the mouse and the pen tool. And so here I am starting on shadow layer number 2. This one's going to be even lighter than the previous one. So, like I said, just to give it a little bit of depth. The darker shadows, I'm going to change those a little bit into more like an ambient temperature. It's kind of ambient shadow. You'll see what I'm talking about later on. When I get through the second level of shadows, but I probably won't do that until I get to what I call the effects part of the video. So really, I'm just gonna go through all my shadows, and then I'm gonna go do all the highlights, and then after that, I do certain effects. So when I say there's so many different ways of, coloring your stuff, I mean, it's true. I see a lot of people will literally do it the reverse way I'm doing. Some guys will put down all the values and the highlights, shadows and stuff, and then they'll put the colors on top of that and multiply that down. So it's like what I'm doing with these shadows, but in reverse with the color. And I mean, that's interesting. I've never tried it that way. Maybe I'll do it that way one day. See if I like that. But yeah, just there's a zillion different ways to do this. So don't take this as like gospel. You know, you can do whichever way is most comfortable to you. So now what I'm doing is I'm just doing some soft rim lighting. I've got like a soft brush. The opacity is pretty low on it, and also I set it to overlay, so it's not super noticeable. Again, like I said, I don't want it to be too three-dimensional, but just to give it a little bit of depth. And with it set to overlay, you can barely see it, and it yeah, it looks pretty good. So I do this level of highlighting, and then I do one other level of harder highlights. But that's as far as I go with my highlighting. So now I'm doing my more hard edge highlights that are more kind of specular. The rim lighting is just kind of diffused, you know what I mean? But these are a little bit harder on the shinier parts of the surface. But even with these, I'm very sparing with them because I don't want too much dimension to bring too much dimension to it. And sometimes, I mean, yeah, my highlights, my specular highlights are very, very soft usually, unless it's something like a metal or something, which would be really shiny. So yeah, that's about as far as I go with my highlighting. And what I like to do with my specular highlights is I like to just make a shape and not fill it. I don't just hit fill really. I kind of hit it with I make it into a selection. I just hit it with the soft airbrush, and I don't fill the whole thing. And then I go back in and I do make one hard shape inside the middle of it, so it looks a little bit more diffused at the edges, but then harder more concentrated in the middle. So yeah, that's how I do my specular highlights. So now what I'm doing is I'm going back into the original darker shadows and making them more ambient shadows. So basically what this does is really when you have a shadow, some of the color of whatever it's next to is reflecting in that shadow. So I will oftentimes go in and make my shadows more ambient. Now technically I'm not doing it correctly, because really it should be the color of whatever you're next to. Let's say you're standing next to a yellow wall. That yellow wall will reflect in your shadow. So you kind of have to be next to something sometimes for it to do that. But I kind of like to cheat and do that, because I really just like to warm my shadows up a little bit. I don't like them to just be kind of stale. Also, I just like putting gradients on stuff sometimes. If there's just a really big boring flat shape, I like to put a little gradient on it just to mess around with it. Kind of just my little artistic touch. So now here what I'm doing is I like to not be destructive with the piece. So instead of doing everything to the basic line art, I'll make copies of it and then I'll change the color. So I'm also softening the lines up with the with the Gaussian blur. So I blur all the lines and then I make them a little bit warmer. I never really go straight black or straight white on any colors. And so what the Gaussian blur does is it gives the line art slightly, like, it gives it a very soft glow to it. And finally what I'm doing here is I put a color over the piece, and I put some noise on it, and then I color burn it, and then mess with the opacity. And what that does is it gives it a little bit of texture, and it also kind of ties everything together, all the colors together a little bit more. So yeah, that's what I do, and that's pretty much it. You could go further with it, like I could put more shadow, more highlights, and more variation, but again, that's gonna just make the piece a little bit more three-dimensional than I want it to be. So that is how I color my comics. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If I wasn't thorough enough about certain things, maybe you do need to have a certain level of basic Photoshop knowledge to know some of the things I was saying. So if I could make it clearer to a beginner, I'll do that. But anyways, like I said before, didn't feel like being on camera today, but next time I'll probably be back on camera. But if you enjoyed it, you learned anything, like, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff, helps me out a lot. And I'll catch you in the next one. All right, thanks. Peace.